Hello and welcome to the More Than Words September Challenge. My name is Kim Hamburg and I'm going to be doing the challenge for this week, which has the three words pink, collage, and wonderful. And those are actually three of my favorite things to think about. And I typically make collages that have lots of color. They tend to have a lot of movement and energy, and usually some kind of strong image somewhere in the thirds area of my collage. And so I am going to make a collage with you today, which is going to include all of these type of elements. I'm going to do it from start to finish, and I'm going to show you some of the techniques I use and some of the products that I use, I guess supplies, materials, that kind of thing as well. I am an intuitive artist, so I don't know what my art is going to turn out to look like, but I do know as an intuitive artist that I want to start on a substrate. In this case, I'm going to start on one of these wooden substrates. You can also use paper, like watercolor paper. You can use a vintage bookboard page. There are lots of different substrates, and you pick the one that works for you and that's in your budget, that is in your space. For example, as you can see, I'm working in a very small space right now for this video, and so I'm choosing something small. So think about those, consider those when you are choosing your substrate and what size you want. I like the wooden substrates because I can push on them, I can really get in there, and it's not flexible, whereas paper is a little bit more flexible. So, I mean, they both have some pros and cons, but anyway, so you need to start with your substrate. I also love glue sticks. This is my favorite, the Elmer's purple glue stick, but really any glue stick you have would work. I like these because they're extremely readily available. You can buy these in a grocery store. They're not very expensive, and I like the bigger size because I use a lot, but they also have them in other sizes too. There's another brand I like is Yoo-Hoo, U-H-U, but this is my favorite that I always go to. So you want a glue stick. Of course you want scissors of any kind of scissors. I've even used kitchen scissors before, like if the paper's really tough or something like that. So I'm not really picky about my scissors. And then I always try to have a black fine line pen. This is a micro tip brush pen that's black. As you can see, it's very well used. I use this to add lines and marks. And then I also like to have a pencil handy. I think I have my pencil here somewhere. Here's a pencil. And then if that breaks, I always try to have a backup pencil. And these pencils are not anything. These are just the standard #2 pencils like you used in school. I also try to have some kind of utility blade or utility knife or X-Acto knife. I don't always use it, but I like to have that. Because we're working with pink today, I chose a really nice, vibrant pink paint. And then the other thing you need are your papers. Now, I tend to gravitate towards the vintage papers, and I pulled this one out because I just love this one. This one has everything I like in it. First of all, those are just extras there. It's vintage, so this was written, I think this is from 1940s. The paper on here is that, you know, kind of really old school matte. It's not glossy. It's a thirsty paper, meaning that it will really take paint and glue well. It'll hold on. And then it also has repetitive things in it. For example, here's the repetitive lines. The word R is repeated several times. So I always look for repetition. I also love numbers in mine because it gives an added graphic element. So this one has the numbers in it, and it has all the things I love about paper. So, and this one even has a bonus because somebody has actually worked a little bit in this workbook. And then the back page, I love this back page. I'm not going to use it yet. This is one of those pages where I kind of keep in the back of my mind, and when a special project comes along, I know it's there. I find these vintage papers at thrift stores, and you can also go to like used bookstores. I try not to pay very much because I know that I'm going to be, you know, ripping these out and using them. Another type of book I like is like an old paperback. Again, this one has the words. I love words, but it also has some diagrams, numbers, those kind of things. And this is the type of paper similar to this. It's that matte paper, very thirsty. I try to stay away from glossy if I can, at least on the bottom layers, because I want the glue and everything to adhere to my substrate. And so these little thirstier papers work well for that. I also look for vintage sheet music. Again, that same kind of paper. I like this one because it's neutral. There's no words, there's no numbers, but it does have these lines that go across. So I'm always looking at papers in terms of design elements and ideas of composition, because this is how I'm going to set up my under layers before I put the top layers on. And I want those to be compositionally correct. Okay, the other thing I like to use are my own papers that I paint on the jelly plate. Like this one is one that I did. I use wet strength tissue paper, and I also liked Swedish tracing paper. Both of those are good. And the reason, because this is transparent when it goes onto your paper, so you can see some of what's underneath. So there's that one. I also like to use just regular vintage papers, and I will make some grungy elements. I love grunge. This one I made on the jelly plate as well. And then recently I've been really into circles. So this is a page of circle stickers like you can get from the office supply store. Here's another one. They come in this color as well. But you know, these kind of stickers that you peel off, and normally you would run these through the printer. I just paint right on top of them. And I use acrylic, fluid acrylic paint, and I get these really nice circles. And in fact, that first collage that I showed you incorporates some of those circles that I have had. So here are the 3 circles, and they came from a page like this where I had colored the circles first, then I put those on. And I try to reinforce those with glue because they are sticky, but not really sticky. So before I put them on, I make sure to put some glue down and then the sticker on top. Okay. And then I also like to use my jelly plate for making, just kind of interesting texture. Here's another one. I use stencils for these. Here's another one for interesting texture. Here's another circle sticker page I made. I'm not going to use these today necessarily because, we're doing pink and wonderful. To me, collage is just wonderful. So I feel like that we have established ahead of time that because collage is wonderful, that's our third element. I also keep at my desk a little bag of just doodads and knickknacks. If you've seen my work on Instagram, you know I love birds. So anytime I find pages that have birds on them, I tear them out knowing that I might use them sometime. So I keep some birds nearby. I also love using anything with color. So I might, if I see some kind of particularly colorful thing, I kind of put that in here too. It's just kind of like my go-to bag, bag of scraps and things. And it also has pages that I've punched holes out of already and other things like that. And recently, I found these at a thrift store recently, and I'm actually going to try to use one of these today. These are just little laser cut frames, and I found a lot of these, and so I'm going to try to use one of these today. I haven't used one yet, but I think I'll pull this one out, and we'll try to use that today. So I keep a little bag of goodies around too. I call those my little goodies. Then the other thing is my main image. So I tend to gravitate towards vintage, and I also tend to gravitate towards women or girls. And so this is a lovely, this is an old, I guess it's cross stitch, knit, what is this? I guess it's knitting sweaters, but I love these because the expressions, I guess I cut that girl out for some reason. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll cut images out, decide I don't want it, and then I put it back in a book. So that's what happened there. I also like anything with pattern and texture, so that has this. These pages are glossy though, and as you know, I tend to get away from glossy, but when they're the only things, when I really want to use the image, I will use the image. Okay, and in fact, this girl is calling to me. Now, you want to make sure that the image you're using matches your substrate size. So in this case, obviously this girl is too big. Probably what I will do is trim this down to where I'm just using her feet. Or I could just use that, but obviously you can't use the whole thing. But I'm gonna put this one aside. I might use this one. I also liked this, this one back here, this girl. I like, oh shoot. There's some more. Okay. And by the way, I get these at thrift stores, estate sales. If you have a Goodwill outlet in your area, you know, the ones with the bins, I go there about once a month, and you know, the books there are priced by the width of the book, and so it's not very expensive. So in this case, again, the girls are too big, but what I like is, I'm going to take this one out with her hands here. Okay. All right. What I like on this one is, I like this part. It's got the stairs, so we're getting some direction. Her feet are walking. I like that, but I also like this one because here's arm movement that shows direction, and she's clutching something. So this one's good too. And in fact, I think I like this one better than my other one. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. And in the meantime, the ones that I tore out that I'm not going to use, I just put back in the book so that when it's time, when I say, hey, I need a vintage girl or something, then I can just go to this book and everything I need is right there. This one also has creepy dolls in it, which I've made a couple of creepy doll collages in my past. Okay, and then this is just a paper. I'm not going to use it today, but it's another example of one that I used in my, made on my jelly plate. Okay, and the final thing, I try to use some sort of stencils, some sort of directional stencil type thing. So this is just a circle piece. I think it was, this is from Fiskars, but I think it was made for sewing. Anyway, I like to trace around these and do circles. I also look for cardboard things in stores. So like this held containers of cookies. And so I just asked if I could have that. And then I like this one too because of the repetitive nature of the shapes and the fact that I can use this stencil to draw some lines, and I know that they're going to be straight. Okay, so those are stencils that I have on hand. I also found this recently. I really don't know what this is, but I like the fact that the lines are all in a row, and I can use that to draw some lines. Okay, so let's get started, and I'm going to first of all get my glue stick out, wherever that is. I just showed you my glue stick, and now I can't find it. This is the story of Kim. I say, oh, let me get that, and then I can't find it. Okay, but this is a good example to show that I try to buy these in a 3-pack because they tend to be cheaper that way. Okay, and while I am putting tons of glue stick on this, I will talk to you about the fact that collage, in my opinion, is probably the easiest and least expensive art that you can do. Besides watercolor. Watercolors, you just get some watercolor and some water. But the entry point for making collage is small. For example, you don't have to spend very much money. You don't have to have any kind of classes or college or any kind of art degree, because for me, collage is all about using your intuition, your emotions, your feelings, all of those kind of things to help you formulate a narrative onto the page or substrate or whatever. So I'm going to tear this off here, and I'm going to use these. I love these numbers right here, so I'm going to put this right here. Now I want you to notice, first of all, I'm trying to line the paper up evenly so that it's not crooked. Now I don't necessarily mind if it's slightly crooked, but I don't want it to be way off, and I just eyeball it. I don't spend too much time with it, just gonna eyeball it. But what I wanted from this page was this repetition of numbers and lines, because one of the things I try to do in my collages is make sure that I follow the rule of thirds, which, if you know this, that means you kind of mentally divide your substrate into thirds and you try to put something in each of the thirds. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of sheet music now to put up here. I like to mix and match, so I'm going to put some sheet music here. Again, what this is doing for me is these lines right here in the sheet music are reinforcing my composition now. Okay, and then I need something here and here. I found a bunch of really nice maps recently at the thrift store, and I was going through them. And I'm sure everybody's seen old maps. This one's, I guess, from Denver. They tend to have really nice colors. Now, what I'm looking for is something pink, because we're talking about pink today. And let me flip it over this way and see if I can find something pink. I mean, that's pink right there. Worst case, I can just use that, right? And look at this. You can tell that this is great. It's a nice grid. It makes for a nice neutral background. Let me see if I have anything else here that's pink. Lots of yellow. Lots of yellow. Well, you know what? Yellow to me is one of those colors that goes really well with pink. And so I'm going to go ahead and put this in my background. Even though my collage today is pink and wonderful, pink likes yellow. Pink and yellow go really well together. So I'm just going to cut that out, and I'll save the rest of that map. Although this side looks great too. So I've got really two sides I could use. Oh, I'm torn. So what I'm going to do, since I love both sides, I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to use this half up here, and then I'm going to switch down here for the yellow. Okay. So again, I make these decisions just based on intuition, spur of the moment. Again, I don't know how this collage is going to turn out, but I do know that I follow the same type of routine in my collages, in which I always lay down a base layer first, and then I just move up from there, and I try to do lots of different layers. Okay, so I'm going to put this one here, and I'm going to make sure to try to kind of get that line. I'm using this line right here as my line to line that up. Okay, and so now I have most of the substrate covered. There's a little bit here, and I think what I might do with that is, since I'm using this girl, I think I'm going to borrow some from her, because I know that it's going to match, because I'm just using it right from her. Okay, and we're going to put that right there. Okay, and always make sure to burnish your areas really well. And if you don't know what burnishing means, it just means really kind of scraping on that paper or whatever you have to make sure it's down. Now, there are actual burnishing tools you can use, but as you can see, I just use the bottom of my glue stick. I'm gonna make sure this is all good. Okay, now I don't need this over here, so because it's old paper, I can just tear that off. If not, I could just give it a little bit of scissors, and I can take it off with scissors. Okay, so this is my base layer that I'm going to be working with. Okay, now, to this base layer, I want to add some more compositional direction. So we already have some thirds. So here's a third, here's a third, probably right here, and then a third and a third. So we already have some direction. What I want to do now is kind of incorporate all of these together so that they look like they're, just kind of not just randomly placed on there. So this is where my circle, template comes in. And if you don't have something like this, you can use the back of a dinner plate, or you can use a cup, or just anything that you can kind of draw around. And for this collage, I'm just going to put this right in the center. And compositionally, I mean, how much better can you get besides that, right? I mean, that is just right in the center. And it's pleasing to the eye. So now I'm going to take my black marker here, and I'm just going to trace around this. And again, I don't have to be very correct or rigid. In fact, I'm going to kind of move it over a little bit and do it again, just because I like a little bit of, just kind of imperfectness. Is that a word? Imperfectness? I don't like to be totally perfect, because I can now go back like in this area here, and I can use my marker to just kind of color in some areas. And what this is doing for me is it is creating two areas now that are opposite each other, so we get some symmetry, a little bit of symmetry going on. And symmetry, basically, I look at the substrate going down the middle like this, and you want to see kind of some mirror images going on. I'm also going to color in this Colorado, because I don't want this to be Colorado specific. I want somebody to be able to look at this and say, wow, that could be anywhere. Same with Nebraska. Here's the word Nebraska. I'm gonna cut that out. Okay, so now that we have this on there, I want to do some more directional lines. I usually use a ruler, and I also like to make sure that my diagonals are good. Now, these may be covered up, but what this does for me, and I do it with pencil so that if I need to erase it later, or it's not as bold as the black marker. So now I'm just going to go in here and make an X going all the way here, and we know this is my center point now, because that's where the two X's converge. I'm also going to do this here, just so I know where my center is. Now, so here we have we're working with this, you know, two halves, but we're also working in thirds, if that makes sense. And what the circle does is it just connects everything together. The other thing the circle does for me is it provides an immediate focal point so that I know exactly where to put my central image. And if you haven't already guessed it, I just noticed this needs more glue. Okay, my central point, my focal point's right here. And so because I want to make sure my thirds are being recognized, I'm either going to put my focal point here, so like center back, or here, center this way. Now I could also go up and do it that way, but I tend to do side to side. I guess it's just my preference. So this is how I prepare most every collage that I have. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my central image that I have. And again, now that I see my layout, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to just kind of position this to see which of these I might like. Now both of them work well. I'm going to go ahead and tear this in half. So both of these work well. So for example, I want to line her up so that she is in my focal point area, that she's kind of sitting in the circle. So if you notice, I lined up this arm so that it naturally follows this circle, so that when you're looking at this, it sort of looks as if she's part of that circle. So that's something that I look for. Also, this hand, if you notice, is right on this diagonal. So I know that this is the perfect placement for her because she fits into my composition nicely. She also isn't too far up or too far down. And then all I have to decide is, do I want to include this? Do I want to include that? Then I can make some choices as I go along. So she fits very nicely right there. Okay. Now I'm going to go for the feet, and we're going to figure out how the feet can go. Now, I like the feet because we're seeing some directional movement, and it looks like she's, you know, on the move. So again, I want to place her around here, but I want to make sure she fits into the circle as well. So if you notice, I'm going to come down just a bit. I'm putting her foot, this foot, on this line. So let me get my circle back. And this is how you can help yourself make your compositions, you know, really good. So if you notice, I would put her foot right here in this circle, other foot in this circle, so that she is perfectly composed within that. So I'm gonna take that off, and I like that she has some movement here, and I would probably, you know, put something else up there. So then I have to decide, which one do I like? Do I like this one or do I like this one? And I think for today, I'm gonna do this one. She fits in so nicely on there. See how nicely she just fits? It looks like she was just made for it. Because also, if you look at this, here's another thing I just noticed. Like this line right here for the door matches that line here. And so we automatically have some division of the composition going on. Okay, so I'm going to take her. I don't know if I'm going to use this yet, but I'm going to cut it off. I'll save it because I might put it back in later. And I am not a really fussy cutter. I just kind of, you know, cut around because I know that it's going to be covered up, or I can correct it with paint, or I can correct it with another piece of paper on top. So I'm not really too picky, but this hand, because it is a directional line, and I'm going to make sure and kind of give this hand a little bit of better cutting than I normally would, just because I want to make sure the image can be seen as a gloved hand. So I'm going to kind of go in here a little bit. And again, not so perfect, but okay. And then I'm going to save this because I may use that, I may not. I'll just put that aside. And so actually I forgot a little piece right here. I was concentrating on the gloves so much I missed this part right here. Okay, so I'm just going to cut that out. Okay, now let's put her back down and make sure she still works. So we had the gloved hand here, this following the circle. Okay, so she would fit in like right there. I would probably do this. Let me get my circle back and we can see if she fits in the circle well. And actually, to be honest, I would probably put her just like that. Okay. All right. So there she is. And I don't know if you can see in the video, but there are some white areas that are still left around her. So I like to, again, go back with my brush pen, or you can use really any kind of marker or color. If you're doing, if this were a colored piece, like let's say this was pink or something, I might use a pink marker to go around. But essentially what I'm doing, I'm going to leave that because I want people to see that I tore that edge. But this helps it to blend in more into the picture, into the overall composition. And I'm going to be careful in that glove. I'm not going to go around the glove just yet. I might do it later, but I'm going to kind of save that. And then for this one, I'm going to make a heavier line up here because I want to give the illusion that there used to be something there. I'm going to kind of smear that. So this kind of gives it kind of a grungy look. That's, of course, is totally optional. The other thing I want to do is I want to emphasize this line because this is a nice directional line. So I'm just going to go in there and color that. But then I'm also going to kind of smear it a little bit because I don't want it to look too obvious. The other thing you can do to make it look less obvious is you can just take a little eraser, and this erases really nicely off these pages, or at least it kind of gives it more of a transparent look. So you see how that kind of faded it a bit? And so I like to use that trick as well. Okay, so keeping her there, knowing that she's going to be somewhere in this area, I need some more elements. And because it's Pink and Wonderful, I pulled out one of my favorite magazines, Birds and Blooms. And this is a glossy magazine. And if I'm going to use glossy, I put that at the very top, the foremost part of my collage so that it's not underneath. And I picked this one because it has nice flowers. So Birds and Blooms, clearly it's a flower and birds magazine. And you can get these, I get these at thrift stores. In my area, it seems like everybody must subscribe to this because they are all over the place in my area. And I'm not kidding when I tell you I probably have 100 of these books. But as you can see, look at the really nice birds they have. And then they also have some, that's nice too. But then you kind of go to the back. The flowers tend to be more in the back. And you get some beautiful flowers. So I just passed a really nice pink. This one is from 2012. I don't think they make this magazine anymore. I like that. I'm not sure though. They could make it some more. I don't know. So I'm going to use that because I love that pink. And then I'm going to go back and I want to pick a bird that I think will go with my image. That's nice too, that pink. There's the yellow. Now, obviously there's not a pink bird that I know of. Well, I guess there's a flamingo or something, but I'm talking about like a bird you might find flying around your house. So I'm going to show you what I do if I can't find the correct color bird that I want. So I'm going to go through here. Where were those really nice birds that we saw? Okay, so this yellow warbler is fantastic. But if you look at this, go back to your substrate. That is way too big for that. But if I were doing a larger piece, that would be perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go back to these guys. Okay, and I really like this one. And I'm going to tell you why. There's two reasons I really like this one. Number one, size, but also, remember how I had some yellow here? So now here's some yellow. And I'm going to color in pink right here so that we can see, we can kind of make an assumption that that warbler or whatever that is pink. So I've got a little colored pencil here. I'm going to try it out over here first just to see. Okay, that's a nice pink. So I'm just going to use some colored pencil, and where this bird's wing is, I'm just going to color that in pink. So we're going to kind of fool the viewer into thinking we've discovered a new species of pink and yellow bird. And I do this very often. The other thing I like to do is I like to emphasize the beak. So I will go back again with my black marker, and I will just go in there and make sure the beak is very prominent. And then I don't always use the legs, but I try to go in here and make those legs look good. Now, this marker is permanent, and so you want to make sure when you're using glossy paper especially that you use a permanent marker, because if you don't, it's going to just smear and bleed everywhere. I'm going to do a little bit more pink down here. Okay, and now I'm going to cut this bird out, and this is how I do these birds. For me, the birds are too intricate for me to cut all the way. So here's what I do. I tend to cut around the beak because the beak is the most important, because that's the direction the bird is going to point. So I make sure and cut really well around the beak. Then I just kind of get the structure of the body, right there. And the same with here. I just want to get the outline of the bird. Now, of course, there's feathers here and there's feet there, but I'm just going to cut around that because I don't want to waste too much time on that. And then here, I do want it to look like some feathers, so I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to cut that, and there we go. Actually, I'm going to cut a little bit more here. Okay, so basically we have the shape of a bird, and we don't know what bird that is, but it's got some nice pink in it. And then for the flowers, same thing. I'm not going to, cut exactly the flowers. What I want here, I'm going to cut it into a shape that I want. So I was thinking like this would make for a nice kind of a triangle kind of a thing. I don't know what shape this is called. Now I'm going to take out that green because I really don't want green in there. Here's another green. I'm going to take that out. Okay. And then you see how there are some areas within the pink that are white. I'm going to go back with my colored pencil and I'm going to kind of color those in. You could also use like a permanent, if you have a permanent pink marker, or in this case, you could even color in yellow because you know you have yellow in your piece. Okay, so now we have a pink element, a bird, and our main image. And here she is over here. And now we have to assemble this so that it's compositionally correct, looks good, all that kind of stuff. So we know that we know where she's going to go because there's really only one place she can go, in my opinion. In my collage mind, this is the only place she can go. Okay, I love birds, so I tend to try to put birds at the top. Sometimes I will put them here, like I could replace her purse with this bird, for example, and I've done that before, where you can just cut out that image and stick a bird in there. But I think for today, I'm just gonna leave the bird up here, and I'm gonna put this under here like this, because I try to put more weight on the base of the collage. And so this is thicker and darker than this up here, which is, you know, thinner and, you know, not as dark. So I would put that right here. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down because I know I want to put this on here. And I'm going to see here how I have my center line. I'm just going to go right in there. And I do it this way because instead of putting it on the back, because I know exactly where I want to place it, and I can move it around. So I put this on here, and the glue stick allows me to, see how I'm just moving this around? So I'm going to place it here and make sure that my lines are good and etc. Now the other thing I'm looking for here is going back to this diagonal. You see how there's a diagonal right here and there's a diagonal here. So I immediately get this kind of a V shape image, and that's fine. So now, you know, again, I talked about burnishing. The other way that I burnish is I'll just take my pencil and go along here because I just want to make sure everything is glued down. I check my edges. This one's not glued down. So now that's when I kind of go back and get the underside. Okay. Now let's put her on there. And again, we got her like in one spot there. Okay. So I'm going to flip her over and do this. And after I do this, I want to tell you that I love circles, so I'm probably going to put some kind of circle on here somewhere. Let me get her peeled off here. Now, the reason I put the glue directly on the back of this one is because I know the exact placement I want this, and I'm not really going to move it around much. Okay, so here's my placement for her. Before I stick her all the way down, I'm going to get my circle out here and make sure I'm in the line. So what I'm looking for with this is, you see her arm here? I'm making sure the arm follows the circular, I don't know, circular path. I don't really know. I'm sure there's a geometric term that I don't know, but you can see how it's following this line. So now I know that I've got her in the right place. I'm just gonna glue her down and stick her right there. Okay, and then the bird is going to go up here somewhere. But before I put the bird down, I wanna say that I do like to fill in some areas with paint, just to kind of, again, unify everything and make it look good. So I pulled out, this is just pink, abstract pink paint. You can also use markers or other things. I have like an orange paint pen here, which I use a lot. So in fact, I'm gonna use some of this orange up here. Now keep in mind, we have the yellow down here. So this orange is a very light orange. And I'm just gonna fill in some of these white spaces because I don't like all that white. So I don't like all that white that's sitting there. That is my dog barking, by the way. And the other thing I want to do is I want to take this orange and kind of go right along the glove and just kind of fill in some of that as well. Okay. Now, if I had a yellow one of these, I would use it, but I don't. I just have orange. And just in case you're wondering, this is called a pigment deco brush, and it's by Karin, K-A-R-I-N. And I like it. This is permanent. It's acrylic. Anyway, it's just a pen to use. Okay, now for this acrylic paint, I love this color. So I'm going to put a little bit right here on my glove. Again, you can use a paintbrush, a sponge, anything. I just like to use my fingers. I feel like collage is a very tactile art expression for me, so I like to do it this way. Okay, so I'm gonna I want some paint here because I want to unify this, and I'm gonna put some down here as well. And I'm gonna keep in the direction I want to go, so I'm gonna put a little bit here too, so that when the eye looks at this, it can follow that pink around just as it does. So here, you know, you remember sponging techniques from back in the day? I'm kind of just sponging this on, and this allowed me to also see that I have a corner up here. So let me put that corner down. Okay. And by the way, there are many ways to make a collage. And so this is how I make a lot of my collages. So I don't want you to think this is the only way to do it. It's not. But, you know, one of the things I find it's really good for all artists to look at different artists' techniques, because what that does is it allows you to maybe say, you know what, I'm going to try that in my collage or whatever, and it's maybe something you haven't seen before, and then you can either say, wow, I really like that, or boy, that is terrible, I'm never going to use that again. So I do that a lot. I mean, I'll watch other artists make their things, and you know, there might be just one thing I take away, you know, and I say, wow, that's great. And so if you can watch it and say, that's new, I haven't seen that before, or something, I feel like that's a positive thing. Okay, now, as you can see, I have put the paint on there. I'm gonna go back to remember the other section of my vintage kids paper. I'm gonna go back now and I'm gonna pick some of this up. Now, this is gonna do two things. It's gonna help me to have it not be so dramatic and wet. I'm going to pick this up somewhere. It's really kind of full up here. And it's also going to help this dry faster, because if you put it on there too thick or too whatever, it takes a long time to dry. Okay, and then I'm going to save this paper. So now I have some pink on a paper. So if I need to use this again for something, I've got it. Okay, and I'm going to go back in with my orange, because one of the things I've noticed, it took up some of the white from this. So I'm going to go back in here with my orange and just kind of fill in some of those areas. And I'm going to fill in some white there and here. And just because I want to make it look intentional, like I didn't just accidentally put orange there, I'm going to put some orange around here and maybe up here. Okay, so there we go on that. And then now I want to put my bird in, and my bird is going to sit right on top of that. Now, before I put my bird in though, I want to pencil in an area for the bird to sit. And again, I like to kind of do this so that the viewer doesn't have to look very far to see what's going on. So that's that. I need to put a little bit lower, pencil that in. And okay, so the nice thing about penciling is after you get that in, I'm gonna leave those lines there. But if you don't want those lines there, just go in with your eraser and you can take it out with your eraser. So feel free to pencil all you want on your collage, just knowing that you can take that off later if you want to. Okay, so now I'm going to put that bird in there. And again, I know where I want to put the bird, so I'm not putting the glue directly onto the substrate. Okay, so, all right, now I'm going to take my circle. I'm going to get my circle back, and I'm going to make sure bird is aligned. Now, what I'm looking for with the bird is that the curve of the bird matches the curve of the circle. Now it's a little different type of curve, but I can tell you right now that it's not so much matching. There we go. And I also want to make sure that the beak is going across this way as much as it can, because I want the beak to be a direction, and it looks like it's doing a good job. So I'm going to leave that right there. Okay, now this is the final part of the collage where I kind of look at it and I say, okay, what's going on here? And I can tell you right now that this is very noisy right here for me, because I want her hand, hold on just a minute. Hey, Callie, here. My dog is just, I have to throw her a bone at times. Sometimes I think she knows that she's going to get a bone if she barks. So I don't know if that's true or not. Okay, so I'm going to go in and kind of lighten this up a bit. So I'm going to use this is like a beige. I could just use straight white, but because my paper here is not exactly white, I want to make sure that it kind of matches the current color palette. Because the whole idea, especially with collage and design, is that you want everything to fit together. It doesn't necessarily have to be matchy-matchy, but it fits together. Okay, and I'm just using a really cheapy sponge brush. I'm doing it this way because I don't want a lot. So I'm kind of pushing the paint into the sponge, and now I'm going to go in here, and I just want to cover up some of that pink because I think we got too much pink in there. Okay, and I don't want the viewer to get confused. So I'm just kind of, you know, again, sponge painting. I used to do sponge painting when I was a kid quite a bit. Okay, and then now I'm just gonna, again, go over some other spots to just make sure that it's all kind of put together. Okay, and I love putting marks on here, so I'm gonna go up and just do some scribble marks just because I like doing that. And I try to put the squiggle marks at the top and at the bottom somewhere, and this helps me with direction. And then down here, I feel like this coat is kind of lost in space, so I'm gonna scribble in some lines here. And what this is doing for me is it is pushing the image in the back, because now that we have the pencil marks on top, the image is kind of pushed to the back. And since there's a shadow here, I'm going to emphasize this shadow a little bit more by penciling in some shadow marks. So I'm going to do the same over here, and I'm going to do the same over here. What I'm doing right now is purely optional. I just kind of go over the whole thing and make sure everything fits and works. I'm going to outline the bird a little bit here because I feel like we're losing some of the bird's tail. Okay, and then this is where I use my stencils or lines. So I'm going to go over here, and I can either use this or I can use this. But what I need something here that is the symmetrical or mirror, I guess, mirror image of what's over here. So I think I'm gonna do circles because I just love circles. Now I could use some of my circle stickers, but I think that would overpower. I'll show you another thing. Like I could also use like my grungy circles that I made. I have a circle hole punch here, and you know me, I love circles. I love my hole punches. And I do the paper in half. I'll show you for two reasons, because then you get 2 circles here, and you can get 2 circles here. Okay, this, if you want to know, this is a Fisker's. It's called a thick punch. I like it because it's pretty. I use these so often, it's pretty heavy duty. Okay, so the other thing I could do is I could put circles here, and this serves a couple of purposes, because if you notice underneath, we already have the lines that are matched up. So all I would have to do here is just make sure everything fits in. So I could do that as well. Okay, and I do like that, but I'm still going to draw some circles on. So what I want here, I'm gonna go back to my black permanent pen, and I want to make sure my stencils are lined up. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball it here. Because this came from a box, I'm just gonna kind of push that at the top there to give me a guide. Okay, let me get my pen ready here. And this takes a little bit of practice, to get these right. I do this all the time, so it doesn't faze me. But if you haven't done this before, you might just practice. And by the way, I get these boxes come from Dollar Tree, but almost every grocery store, convenience store, lots of stores have these. Hey, Callie, can you stop barking, please? That's my dog. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, now I'm going to fill in those circles with these pink ones, like this. Okay, and actually I might put them over just a bit. I think I'm going to do it like that. Okay, again, it's just kind of, dealer's choice, because it's just really whatever you think you need to make your collage more cohesive. Okay, and I'm just making sure here that the lines underneath the paint match up. And I'm just kind of eyeballing where it's gonna go in the collage. I think that's gonna go right there. Okay, same with this one. I'm gonna put this one up there too. I don't worry too much about that. So let's put this one right up here. Actually, okay, there we go. So, nope. Okay, this one is this one I must have done on the diagonal because the lines aren't exact, but I'm gonna go with these lines and match it up there. I also use the top of my glue stick to varnish, blah, 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 blah. Can't speak. Okay, and I'm almost done, Now, I put these pink circles on, and now I want it to match those flowers. So I'm gonna go back in with some more of that pink, just right here on the tips of this, just to show the viewer that, hey, these things go together. And I'm going to do a little bit of that, put a little bit more on the bottom, because again, we talk about the weight of the collage. I try to put more on the bottom there than on the top. Okay, and the final thing I'm going to do, I love putting letters or numbers on things, and I like to use vintage letter set to do that. And this is no longer made, but this is vintage letter set, and I love this stuff. It's a kind of a rub-on, it's a rub-on transfer really, except it was made for graphic design way back in the 70s, 80s. And the only place really you can find this anymore is if there's like an old art store that's going out of business. I found a lot at an art store recently. You can also look online. Sometimes they show up in thrift stores. I have found them in thrift stores. And the other thing you can do is, if you're on Instagram a lot, you can sometimes find old graphic design artists that might have extra that they're willing to part with. And basically all you do here is you just rub this onto the surface. Now this one is being a little bit more stubborn because these are old. I mean, this thing is probably, it was 1970 to now. What is that? Oh, I have to do the math. Math is not my thing. Let's say 50 years old. So it is dry, and you sometimes have to really kind of push on these. But there's a couple things I like. It's not going to fully come out as the number 3. I like that because it gives you more of a grungy element. And then the other thing I do is once it's on, I now, you know, have, I know where the 3 is going to go. So I will go back in with my marker and just kind of fill that in a bit. And I just love numbers. I could also put letters on. Sometimes you may have seen I'll do like an ABC or something, which actually I might do that here because I still like this this image. So I'm going to line this up here, and I'm just going to do a couple of A's. Now I could do AA, just do it all on, but what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to take the lines of the A, I'm going to forget the rest of the A, and I'm just going to kind of put some lines in like this, like that. Okay, and so this adds more of a grungy element to it, and because I like things in even numbers, that's just 4, I'm going to go down here and put a dot because that gives me 5. Okay, so this is done. And again, I could do more things to it. I could edge it. I could add, you know, more little marks or doodads onto it. But I think for now, this is finished. And so I hope in the end, this is both a pink, wonderful collage for you. I love it because it has lots of things I love. Circles, of course, birds, pink, vintage papers. And I also like that you can still see the vintage paper underneath, and you can see where they were used, but at the same time, they have the elements up on top. Okay, well, thank you, More Than Words, asking me to be your guest artist this week. And follow me on Instagram at gluepaperscissors_. Make sure you put that underscore in there. And I will see you at another time. Thank you.